waking up multiple times, at night, can't get back to sleep, maybe have brain fog, maybe you've gained weight and all of a sudden overnight it all plopped at your tummy. So let's look at the next slide. No one puts this together, not us as women, but our providers don't put it together either. You may be having periods. They may be coming more often or less often, but you still may be having periods. So a lot of these symptoms we don't associate with menopause because we're like, well, menopause means no periods. And many of us don't have hot flashes or night sweats. And so oftentimes we think, well, menopause means hot flashes. I'm not really having hot flashes, so that can't be menopause. And the other part is when we look in the mirror, we don't look our age. We don't look like we could possibly be old enough to be in menopause. But the truth is that as we get older, after 40, our hormone levels start to change and our estrogen levels start to drop. And as our estrogen levels drop, we start to have a little bit of loss of memory. We start to notice weight gain. Our sleep isn't the same. Sex drive, what's that? I mean, sometimes our sex drive just drives away and it doesn't even wave goodbye. But a lot of times we don't even care. Then we have these crazy periods that can be very worrisome. We can wonder, is there something seriously wrong? Not to mention the bladder issues. And the issue that comes up for most of us, myself included, is that we're busy. And if you're joining from a high school, you're a PTA mom, you're super busy. And we don't put ourselves anywhere on the list. We're not even close to first. Sometimes we're not even last. We're too busy taking care of everyone else to even kind of deal with some of these issues, because so oftentimes we just adapt to them and we move on. We kind of hope they go away. So let's look at the next slide. So what is going on? In menopause, there's a whole lot of symptoms that we have. We can have irregular periods that start in our 40s. And there was a question that came in about how long does it last? Well, perimenopause is that magical time in your life before your periods stop altogether, because menopause is actually just one day. Menopause is one day. I say it's that one magical day when you haven't had a period for at least 12 months. The very next day, you are postmenopausal. So perimenopause is that time between having regular, predictable periods to having zero periods. Perimenopause often, we'll look at the next slide, perimenopause can involve a lot of hormonal swings. It can involve a lot of hormone, I call it the hormonal roller coaster. And a lot of times, because we're still having periods, we don't associate it with menopause. So tonight, we're going to talk about hot flashes. We're going to talk about weight gain, because that's what a lot of my patients come in to talk to me about. We'll talk about your sleep, your exhaustion, brain fog. We'll talk about the bladder, and we'll talk about the vagina. And I just want to say, tonight's talk is just for us. Please don't invite your teenagers, because I do have a vagina puppet that I'll use to show you anatomy without having to put up any weird pictures. But I'll warn you ahead of time. So next slide, please. So let's talk a little bit about perimenopause and hot flashes. Next slide, please. And about 75% of all women will have hot flashes, but not everybody does, and they're all different. So your hot flash might be different than mine, might be different from my neighbors, might be different from my cousins. And not everybody feels hot on their face. Some people feel it inside their body. It's like there's a furnace in there. Some women don't have night sweats, but they'll wake up feeling clammy on the back of their neck. Some women will feel like they're sweating on their forehead or their upper lip. And some women shiver. They actually quiver or shiver. They feel chilled. And then if you're of Asian descent or South Asian descent, you may only have muscle or joint aches. If you're an African American woman, you might feel more severity with your hot flashes because African American women typically experience them differently. So there's a lot of genetic and ethnic differences. So hot flashes, menopause doesn't just mean hot flashes. Okay, next slide, please. Thanks, Vicki. You're so good at this. Some women will feel sudden feelings of warmth. You might wake up sweaty or clammy. And here's what I hear from my patients. They'll say, well, I'm not really having night sweats. They're not drenching. I don't have to get out of bed and jump in the shower. But I wake up and I've got sweat in the back of my neck or under my breast. And I think, well, I'm just wearing too many warm clothes, or maybe, I shouldn't have worn that flannel nightgown. If you're in your 40s and you're waking up sweaty or clammy, you're having small temperature changes in your body. Some women feel like they're on fire from within. Some women will have heart palpitations with their hot flashes or night sweats, which can really freak them out. And here's the thing. If you're having hot flashes and heart palpitations, it's real. It's really happening, because inside your body, inside the hypothalamus in your brain, when we have these temperature changes, we have a release of fight or flight stress hormones. The fight or flight stress hormones that are just like adrenaline, and they cause your heart to race. And they're supposed to cause your blood vessels to dilate and your sweat glands to activate. But in menopause, it gets all mixed up. So instead of cooling you off, it makes you feel hotter. And then what happens is that even stress can cause another hot flash or night sweat. So if you're in the middle of a hot flash and you feel like your heart is racing, it's because your heart is racing because of all those fight or flight stress hormones. And sometimes that is so worrisome, it will cause another hot flash. So it can be cycles of that. Some women sweat through their clothes. Some women find that they have to shop at Chico's now because they have so many shells and sleeveless, and they're wearing multiple layers so they can peel them on and off. And again, some women will only have shivering or quivering. And then again, some women only have muscle or joint aches. And here's what's the problem. A lot of healthcare providers don't put that together. They don't say, hey, the muscle and joint aches that you're having, that's not arthritis. It's not because you played too much pickleball or tennis, or or because you're running. It's because your collagen levels are declining because your estrogen levels are declining. So let's look at the next slide. Why does all this happen? Why does it happen? Why do we have to suffer all the time as women? And so we'll go to the next slide. This happens because you are on a hormonal roller coaster. And if you have teenage daughters, you are also witnessing another hormonal roller coaster that's similar to yours. So it's kind of like puberty, right? So in puberty, we have all these hormones bathing our bodies, bathing our brains. And as women, and don't get me wrong, boys also have a hormonal roller coaster with increasing testosterone levels. But I want to bring you back to puberty, right? So remember when you went through puberty and your body started to change and you started to develop curves, right? Well, that was from estrogen. So your estrogen levels were now increasing. And it gives you soft skin, curves, breast development. All of a sudden you notice pubic hair, underarm hair, maybe some sexual thoughts or sexual fantasies. And you might notice that you can eat anything you want. You can eat as much as you want and you don't gain an ounce, right? Well, all that changes in perimenopause because now you have these wide swings of hormones because we're not ovulating regularly. So we don't have a balance of estrogen and progesterone. So this hormonal roller coaster that we're on in our 40s and in our 50s, it can last for 7 or 10 years. That's right, women can have irregular periods, hot flashes, night sweats, experience extreme fatigue, exhaustion, bladder issues for 7 to 10 years prior to the period stopping altogether. And when I say roller coaster, that's because sometimes we have a lot of estrogen. So we'll have breast tenderness, we'll have headaches, we feel PMSy, we feel like we're going to have our period any minute. And then other times we don't feel like that. We feel really hot. We're having hot flashes or night sweats, really exhausted. And that's because we don't ovulate regularly. Our menstrual cycle is out of balance. So we're not producing estrogen and progesterone in the same way we used to. So next slide, please. Over time, as we get older as women, what happens is that our estrogen levels decline. They start to go down, but they don't go down in a perfect fashion day after day after day. There can be some swings in our estrogen levels. But menopause and all the symptoms that you're experiencing or that you may experience in the future if you're not quite there yet are all because the hormone that makes us women, estrogen, it's declining. It goes down over time. And estrogen has a lot of benefits in our body, right? So estrogen, not only does it give us our curves and our soft skin and our higher pitched voice, but estrogen also helps us sleep well at night. It helps our brains work with working memory. It helps us have a nice, moist vaginal area, right? So when you have a lot of estrogen and you go to the bathroom and you wipe yourself, the toilet paper does not get stuck. But as we get older, as our estrogen levels go down, when you're wiping, sometimes the toilet paper gets stuck, or sometimes having sex is uncomfortable, and no amount of lubricant in the world is going to help that. And that is all because our estrogen levels are declining. And let's look at the next slide. So I want to talk a little bit about the hot flashes and night sweats in case that's your experience. So on the left, you see a woman in a yellow dress with green hair, and she has a very wide thermostat. So that means that she can go to Arizona and have lunch or play golf, and she's not going to sweat. And she can go to Alaska and hike around with her kids, and she's not going to shiver because she has a very wide thermostat. No sweating, no problem. But as we get older, that thermostat in our brain, it's in our hypothalamus, it gets more and more narrow. It's less forgiving. Now lunch in Arizona, forget about it. You're going to sweat. Or hiking in Alaska, you're going to shiver. All of this comes down to what's going on in the hypothalamus in the brain. That's where your thermostat is. And that thermostat is very sensitive to two things. Those fight or flight stress hormones, which can be triggered by anything. Somebody cutting you off in traffic, an email from the principal, having an argument with one of your children, having hot coffee, taking a hot shower. I mean, this is not about me, but when I was going through this, I could not take a hot shower because when I came out, I couldn't put makeup on unless I had a fan blowing full Arctic on my face, or else my makeup would run off. So hot coffee will do it, spicy food, alcohol, all of those things will trigger a hot flash or night sweat later on in the day or later on at night. So stress can do it. But I want to tell you something else that a lot of people don't know. And this is important to remember when we talk about remedies later. The hypothalamus, that thermostat in your brain, well, one of the things that keeps it wide, that keeps it very forgiving, is serotonin. So serotonin is that feel-good, happy neurotransmitter or hormone that we all have in our bodies, right? So serotonin is actually made by estrogen. So estrogen is the precursor hormone for serotonin. So as estrogen levels go down, serotonin levels go down. And serotonin receptors, they also disappear. So it's no wonder that more women are likely to have depression in menopause because they have less estrogen and they have less serotonin. You can go to the next slide. So our brains are very, very sensitive to less serotonin. But the good news is that if you decide that you want to use estrogen, or you decide, well, I'm going to use another remedy that increases my serotonin level, it will help with the hot flashes and the night sweats. So they're all interrelated. So what are the triggers? You probably know your own triggers if you're having hot flashes or night sweats. You might find that it's stress that does it, or a hot cup of coffee, or alcohol. And many women
Yeah,
find that
that
red
sound
wine is a
I'm unable to
particular.
mute. No, it's not. It's your speaker's not mute.
Oh, so if you want to be on mute, Vicky, that'd be awesome. If you're working out, it doesn't mean you have to do hot yoga. Working out can cause a hot flash. Wearing too many clothes, and of course, hot weather will do it. But spicy food and fried food can also cause hot flashes and night sweats. Go ahead, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. What can you do? All right, what can you do? If you don't want to use any kind of prescription or over-the-counter remedy, you can try meditation, yoga, and mindfulness, because this is a natural way to increase your serotonin levels, and it does work. You can wear layers and peel them off and add them as you need them. Instead of having hot coffee in the morning, have iced coffee or iced tea. You can reduce alcohol and smoking. Take a cool shower in the morning, or start with a hot shower and then turn it down to cool. And then lower the bedroom temperature at night. There's also lots of things you can buy. There's special mattresses that have gel pack inserts that you can use. You can get a bed fan that's just in the bed to get you a nice little tent of cold air. And then, as the weather gets warmer here in Silicon Valley, you can go out, turn your car on, put the AC on, and grab yourself a nice cup of iced tea or iced coffee, so you're not getting into a hot car if you're taking the kids to school or picking them up. Next slide, please. All right, does this look familiar to anyone? Mornings at midlife. One of the things that's recently been discovered, and I should tell you, I'm going to just take a little segue here. Everything I'm telling you is evidence-based. I'm not only a member of the North American Menopause Society, but I'm certified by them. So everything we talk about tonight is based on research and science. It is not based on my opinion or my experience seeing women over the last 30 years. And one of the things that has happened recently is that more and more women are becoming the researchers, and they're more and more interested in these topics. And so we're getting a lot more data. Mornings at midlife can look like this, even if you've been in bed for 8 hours and you think, I was in bed, I was asleep for 8 hours, but why am I still exhausted? And this is one of those things where a lot of us, we don't connect the dots. We go see our healthcare provider and they're checking our thyroid, which they should. They're making sure we're not anemic, which they should. But a lot of women say, I'm just exhausted. It's profound exhaustion. I've never experienced this before, but I'm in bed, I'm sleeping. We now know that throughout the night, especially in perimenopause, many women have what's called sleep fragmentation. So let's go to the next slide. This was discovered by some researchers at Penn and at Harvard, Dr. Hadeen Jaffe, Dr. Rebecca Thurston, and Dr. Pauline Mackey. And they have found that as estrogen levels drop and there's less serotonin, we get what's called sleep fragmentation. And if you have a smartwatch or you're wearing a Oura ring to bed, you can track your delta wave sleep. That's the deep restorative sleep that we all need every night. We all need about 1 to 1.5 hours of deep delta wave sleep every night. But for perimenopausal and menopausal women, what happens is that we have mini awakenings. It's a small awakening. We don't really wake up. We're not conscious of it, but we move out of that deep sleep into light sleep multiple times at night. Our brain doesn't have enough time to wash out the toxins. Our brain doesn't have enough time to recharge. And we wake up exhausted with no memory and a lot of irritability. So not only is it from less serotonin that we're irritable and we may be moody, but it's because our sleep is being fragmented. And I just want you to think back to when you had little ones, when you first brought your kids home from the hospital and you're waking up every 2 hours. Your brain wasn't functioning very well then, and it doesn't function very well now. Now, here's the thing. Why don't our healthcare providers connect the dots? I'm going to tell you, it's not a secret. It's well known and it's published. Most healthcare providers, even OBGYN providers, only get 1 hour of menopause education in their 4 years of training. And that's shocking, right? It's shocking. And I don't know about you, but 1 hour to learn about women's health for 30 to 50 years is just not enough. I can barely master a recipe in an hour, let alone know how to care for a woman throughout a third or half of her lifespan. But the sad truth is that in medical education, most providers are only getting 1 hour, and the hour they have is based on 10 or 20 years of the research that happened 10 or 20 years ago. So if you're looking for a menopause provider, you can go to menopause.org, and I'll put that in the chat. That's the North American Menopause Society, menopause.org, and you can find a provider who's certified by the North American Menopause Society. So unfortunately, many women go to their providers and they're like, I'm exhausted. And they're like, well, let me help you with your sleep. You've got insomnia, and they're sending them for a sleep study. But there's one key question. When was your last period? How often are you having periods? Are they irregular? Because if you're in your 40s and early 50s and you're exhausted and you have brain fog, the likelihood is that it's not early onset of Alzheimer's, but that it's perimenopause. Next slide, please. So what can you do to get better sleep? Well, these are all this normal sleep hygiene things that we all should be doing, right? Less screen time, especially before bed. You probably know this because you probably told your kids, right? If you see something that's light in your eye, it takes your body a full hour to make its own natural melatonin, which is the natural hormone your brain makes to help you sleep. Pets, they're the worst, man. Their sleep cycles are very short. So they're waking up, they make a lot of noise, they fart, they burp, they make a lot of noise at night, and they can walk on you, lick you, whatever. Pets are not good in your room. Of course, no smoking or alcohol. And you might try mindfulness or meditation, and you don't have to do it for 20 minutes or 30 minutes. There's a couple of really cool apps you can get. And I listen to an hour and a half of wave music. And that's how I fell asleep a lot when I was in perimenopause. And now I've trained my brain. It takes 3 weeks with neuroplasticity. Now all I have to do is listen to those waves for about 6 minutes and I'm asleep. You can try chamomile tea. That's a natural sleep aid, and natural tryptophan. So tryptophans are found in bananas, they're found in milk, and they're found in turkey. So before bed, you can have, quarter of a banana, some milk, that old warm milk and cookies before bed. It works to help people sleep. And melatonin, it really does help people sleep. It's a pretty safe over-the-counter supplement, and 2 to 5 milligrams has been found to be a safe amount. I can't see the last thing on there, sorry. Your bedroom is only for sex and sleep. All right, let's talk about weight gain. We can go back to that slide. Let's talk about weight gain. So I call this the menopause belly. And not every single, but most of my patients, I would have to say about 95% say, what happened? I'm eating the same food. I'm eating the exact same food. I'm exercising the same amount. And then overnight, bingo, all my fat is right here in the middle. And then I call that the menopause belly. It's deposited at your waist, and it's not your imagination. And it's not that you suddenly don't have any willpower. There's a few things that contribute to this. So let's go to the next slide. When our estrogen levels drop, right, as that estrogen level drops, a couple things happen. Your metabolic rate actually drops. So you don't metabolize food in the same way that you used to. And that's why you can eat the same amount, exercise the same amount, and you're going to gain weight. So in menopause, your metabolic rate goes down. Number 2, estrogen As estrogen drops, guess what? Insulin resistance goes up, but not enough to be detectable through those hemoglobin A1C tests or any of the insulin testing or glucose testing your healthcare provider might order. It's just enough to really cause you to gain some weight. Also, as we get older, unless we're doing a lot of resistance and weight training, we naturally lose muscle mass. That's called sarcopenia. But another thing happens, your gut biome changes. So your gut biome, that's the universe of healthy bacteria that live in your gut, they also change. And guess what? They like vegetables. So the more vegetables and the more bulk that you have from things like butternut squash and zucchini and lots of vegetables and whole grains, the happier your gut biome is. And in menopausal women, because this is found in research, they'll increase your metabolic rate. So your gut biome will increase your metabolic rate if you increase your have more of a plant-based diet. What does the next slide show, Vicki? Look. Oh no, let's go back one. I want to tell you how you can lose weight at midlife. And this is based on research. So there's research that shows that most people can stay on the same kind of healthy eating pattern for about 2 weeks, right? But what you want to find is you want to find a healthy eating routine that you can stick with for a lifetime. So a plant-based diet, not becoming a vegan, not becoming a vegetarian unless you want to for another reason, but increasing your plant-based food and reducing what we call land-based protein. So by reducing land-based protein, that's chicken, beef, pork, and eggs, by reducing that and increasing your fish, especially fatty fish that has omega-3 fatty acids in it, your body will increase your metabolic rate. The other thing you can do is intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting for women over 40 has been shown in research to work very, very well. All right, intermittent fasting, for my patients, they get overwhelmed. They're like, oh my God, is it the 8-12, the 8-16? This is what I tell you. Have a good lunch. Have a nice, healthy lunch that you enjoy. Enjoy your food. I'm Italian, so I like to eat. Then have a very, very small snack at about 4 or 5. And the snack should be vegetable-based without any carbohydrates. Maybe like I do a cucumber tomato salad with a little olive oil, a little balsamic vinegar, and some water. Because you don't want to eat after 7 p.m. Because any calorie you eat after 7 p.m., you are not going to metabolize it. And that can be 300, 500, 700 calories after 7. And it all goes right here to your waist. So you don't have to do this every night. You can do this every other night. Because I know myself, and I know most of my patients are like, oh man, I don't want to give up dinner every night. You don't have to. Give it up every other night, but have something nutritious at about 4 or 5, and try not to eat after 7. And I'll tell you one other thing that contributes to weight gain at midlife. If you're having night sweats, if you are having interrupted sleep, if you're getting up because you're hot and you're sweating, or you're getting up because you have to use the bathroom, guess what? You increase your calories the next day by about 300 to 500 extra calories. So interrupted sleep equals more calories the next day, and typically people crave carbohydrates. And that's why people who have shift work, like when I was a night shift nurse at Stanford, we ate a lot. And we ate a lot the next day because there was something going on with the appetite in the stomach, the ghrelin. So if you're having interrupted sleep, you're probably eating a little bit more. Try intermittent fasting and go to a more plant-based diet and reduce your land-based protein. So let's look at the next slide. Okay, is this familiar to anybody? Does anybody think, I can't go to book club because they're gonna make me laugh and then I'm gonna leak a little urine? And I'm talking about this because 1 in 3 women over 35 leak urine. So if you're leaking urine, you're not alone. You're not alone. It's not just you. It's not because you're not doing your Kegels. It's nothing wrong with you. There's an issue that happens as estrogen levels drop, collagen drops, and collagen is what keeps us having nice soft skin and reduces wrinkles, but it's also part of the muscles in your pelvic floor. So as estrogen levels drop, you have less collagen in that pelvic floor, so the muscle strength is not as strong, and so a lot of women end up having leaking. And if you've had pregnancies, if you've had 2 or 3 pregnancies, even if you had a C-section, the pelvic floor muscles can be really weakened. So it's very, very common for women to have a lot of leaking, or even a little, but any little bit can be very upsetting. It can be very embarrassing because, we worry about the smell of urine. And even some women will have leakage of stool, and that can happen at this time as well. So if this is happening to you, I don't want you to give up. I don't want you to just go out and buy more pads, or avoid running with your kids, or running with your girlfriends, or doing any exercise. There's a lot that can be done. There are pelvic floor physical therapists, and they help women strengthen those pelvic floor muscles. There's a pelvic floor physical therapy program at El Camino Hospital. You can also reach out to me, and I have information for how to find a pelvic floor physical therapist in your area. There's a lot in this area. But a lot of women will also need to increase their vaginal estrogen, which is a local estrogen in the vagina. It doesn't travel through the body, and that can really help with leaking. Because a lot of women also have urgency. They feel like, oh my God, I get pretty close to the bathroom, and then my brain must think, oh, I'm close enough. And so it just lets everything go. That's called urge incontinence. And a lot of us have it like, we've got a lot of groceries, we're coming into the house, we're really close to the bathroom, and all of a sudden we're letting go. But you should be in charge of when you go to the bathroom, and there's a lot that can be done. So please do not just put up with this. It doesn't get better on its own. It's not going to go away. And, a couple of visits with someone like myself or a pelvic floor physical therapist can change your life. All right, next slide. So how do you cool off? If you're having hot flashes or night sweats, how do you cool off? And we'll go to the next slide. We talked about avoiding triggers earlier, but you have a lot of options that you can use that are safe and effective. And again, I'm presenting this as evidence-based information from the North American Menopause Society about remedies for relief. So let me start with herbs, because there's a lot of questions that I received about herbs. The only over-the-counter supplement that has been shown in all of its clinical trials, not just a couple, to work is a soy metabolite known as Equelle. And it's EQUELLE. And you can buy it over the counter online from equelle.com. It's made by Nature Made Vitamins, right? That's the vitamins you see at Costco that are yellow and red. So Equelle, it's not soy, so it has no soy in it, and it's hormone free, but it reduces hot flashes and night sweats by 50%. It increases sleep time by about 50 minutes or about an hour, and it reduces vaginal irritation and soreness. And that's because the soy metabolite, which is known as S-Equelle, its molecular structure is very similar to estrogen, but it is not an estrogen. It doesn't cause breast cancer, doesn't increase the risk of any breast growth. It doesn't affect the uterus. It doesn't cause bleeding. And so this is the only over-the-counter supplement that is endorsed by the North American Menopause Society. Again, that's Equelle. You can get that at equelle.com. I'll put that in the chat in a minute. So remember, we talked about serotonin. Well, serotonin is that feel-good hormone in your body that helps widen your thermostat. And we can obtain serotonin through antidepressants. These are the SSRIs or SNRIs. These are the selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors or selective serotonin norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors. These are things like Zoloft, Paxil, Prozac, Celexa, Lexapro, Effexor. These medications were found, well, the way we found out that they worked were with breast cancer survivors who cannot use estrogen. They were having a lot of hot flashes and night sweats from their tamoxifen or the other medications they used to bring their estrogen levels down. So they're having horrible hot flashes and night sweats, except the ones who are on antidepressants for other reasons. The women on antidepressants had fewer hot flashes and night sweats. So they did some randomized, double-blind, placebo-controlled trials, and those are like the standard that we use. And they found that, boy, pretty much all antidepressants help widen that thermostat and help decrease hot flashes and night sweats. And I have patients who are like, great, I'll take that because it'll help me feel better and help increase my serotonin. But it really works. All right, what about hormones? Because there's a lot of questions about hormones that I've received. And let's go to the next page. Next slide, thank you. When we talk about hormones, let's talk about facts, not fear. All right, we're going to talk about bioidentical hormones. So a lot of women think, I don't want hormones, they're not natural, right? And sometimes we think, well, hormones are what bodybuilders use, right? You've had hormones in your body, you have them now, but you started having a lot of estrogen in your body at puberty, right? It's what gave you your curves, caused your breasts to grow, pubic hair, right? So you've had estrogen every single month when you have your menstrual period. You have a lot of estrogen, then you ovulate, and then your ovary makes progesterone. So you've had estrogen and progesterone in your body since puberty. But with menopause, your estrogen levels start to decline, and that's why we have all of these symptoms, right? Because our bodies are used to having a lot of estrogen. Most of us at the North American Menopause Society, we use bioidentical hormones. That means hormones that are exactly the same molecule that your body is used to having. And these are derived from a plant source, right? So they're not derived from any other means. They're derived from a plant source. So when we talk about estrogen, we use what's called systemic estrogen for the whole body to help with hot flashes and night sweats, to help people sleep, reduce the brain fog and the fatigue. And if a woman has a uterus, we also have to add progesterone because the estrogen by itself will cause the lining of the uterus to build up with blood, right? That's what it does prior to ovulation. So we have to use progesterone because that limits the growth of the uterine lining and that reduces the risk of uterine cancer. So when a woman decides to use hormones, she's going to be using estrogen and progesterone, right? We use them in a combination. That is the safest way to do it. The risks of using estrogen are rare. And when we think about the risks, if you've decided to use hormones and you get your package home from the pharmacy, unfortunately, in the package, there's something called a black box warning. And it says, estrogen causes breast cancer and it causes heart attacks. And I just want to explain that that FDA warning, that black box warning, is based on research that is over 20 years old. It is not based on bioidentical hormones. It is based on Premarin and Provera, an oral pill, and the Provera medroxyprogesterone acetate is not bioidentical. That warning about the increased risk of breast cancer scared a lot of women from using hormones. And yet, when we look at the research over the last 20 years, we have research from Europe and we have research in North America. And there has been no evidence that estrogen increases the risk of breast cancer. And there's been no evidence that the type of progesterone we use, which is micronized progesterone or prometrium, increases the risk. So we have a lot of good data, but we live in a society with a lot of lawyers and it's very litigious. So at the North American Menopause Society, we say, look, if there is a risk, and we don't think there is, but if there is a risk, it's the same risk for breast cancer as a woman who does not exercise at least an hour and a half a week. So for women who are not getting enough exercise, their risk of breast cancer is about the same as a woman who's using estrogen, if there's a risk. Now, there's one other thing to remember. If you decide to use vaginal estrogen, the vaginal estrogen just stays in the vagina. It doesn't go through the whole body. So it doesn't help with your bones. It doesn't help with hot flashes or night sweats. It doesn't help with anything. Vaginal estrogen does not circulate through the whole body, but unfortunately, the FDA puts it on that black box warning because it's called class labeling. So every estrogen has to have the same warning. Now, again, this is not about me, but my mom had breast cancer and she had the increased genetic risk. She was a BRCA1 positive. And so I was super worried when I went through menopause, but I did the research, became NAM certified, and found that, wow, these risks are really overblown. And the real data does not show an increased risk from systemic or whole body estrogen or from vaginal estrogen. Next slide, please. All right, let's talk about the vagina. All right, your vagina. This is where I'm probably going to bring out the puppet. So if you have anybody at your house that should not be looking at the vagina, well, it's really a vulva puppet because it's the whole vulva and the vagina. Now's the time to ask them to leave. And this is not scary. It's not going to freak you out. Let's go to the next slide. So unfortunately, as we get older and our estrogen levels drop, everything gets very, very dry. And you may notice this if you're wiping and the toilet paper gets stuck, right? There's less ability to stretch. There's less natural lubrication. Women have more pain with sex and they have more urinary tract infections. There's less elasticity, right? And this is what I think happens. You know, at first it's like you're busy, right? So you go to the bathroom, toilet paper gets stuck, you're like, oh, I got other things to worry about. And pretty soon you get so used to having a dry vagina that you don't really think about it. And then pretty soon you can't wear your tight jeans or your yoga pants because it's uncomfortable. And then after a while, when you're with your partner or you're using a toy to have sex, it's so uncomfortable, you have to use a lubricant. And then after a while, there's not enough lubricant in the world, and it's so painful, you stop having sex. I see women every single week who haven't had sex in 2 or 3 years, have a willing partner, like their partner. They like their partner, they want to have sex, but they haven't for 2, 3 or more years because it's painful. Now, there's lots of other reasons why people aren't having sex, right? There's anger and lots of other things, and our partners might have their own issues. But lots of people are not having sex and want to because of pain. But that doesn't have to be your experience either, because sometimes all it takes is a little lubrication, and sometimes it takes seeing somebody like myself who can help reverse that process. So we will. When things are dry, I call that puberty in reverse. But what we want, and we're going to go to the next slide, what we want is for you to be warm and moist. And the way to do that, if possible, if you're not a breast cancer survivor, is you can use vaginal hormones. So vaginal estrogen, it reduces the risk of infections. It helps the pH become normalized. It helps with pelvic tone, right? It helps with those strong muscles. It reduces and eliminates pain with sex, and it does not increase the risk of breast cancer. So in the last month, I've had 2 patients come in who could not have sex, and both of them, it was more than 2 years. And for both of them, 3 weeks was all it took. 3 weeks, that's it. And they were overwhelmed. They didn't know where to start. They're like, oh my God, what do I have to do? And I'm like, let's just try this. And within 3 weeks, and that's what the data shows also, it only takes about 3 weeks for those estrogen receptors in the vulva and the vagina to be like, I'm thirsty, please give me some estrogen so that I can expand. So can I see what the next slide is? Yeah, you can use that. You can use lubricants. Coconut oil works really well. And when you use it, it's a solid at room temperature. But then when you touch it, it becomes a liquid. And I like the aroma. It's kind of like going to Hawaii without the cost of a plane ticket. And because I'm Italian, I also use olive oil. So any cooking oil, anything that you use for cooking or you can ingest, you can also put in your vagina very, very safely. There's even sweet almond oil. I mean, so if you see me at Trader Joe's and I'm buying a jar of coconut oil, it may be for Thai cooking, but it may not be. So let me show you my vulva puppet. Okay, you ready for this? This is the vulva puppet. And this is from a woman named Dory Lane, and she is up in, we use these at UCSF. So this is the labia majora, this red velvet area here. This is the labia majora. Then it's nice and puffy and it's plump when it's healthy. But as women get older, this gets really dry and small and it can even disappear. The satin area, this is the labia or the labia minora. These are the smaller inner lips that are here to protect the vaginal opening. This is meant to show you the clitoral hood. This is meant to show you the clitoris, and this is not to scale, okay? And right here, I don't know if you can see that, but that little rosebud is the urethra where urine comes out. And here you see all these folds in the fabric. This is the vagina. The folds represent the rugae. So our vaginas have accordion-like folds that can get really small, or they can expand to deliver a baby's head or to accommodate a tampon or a partner or a toy. Now, the vagina here has its own biome. It has its own universe of bacteria that keep the pH nice and acidic, nice and low, and that helps prevent infection. And as we get older, without that estrogen, everything gets much, much smaller and tighter. And that vaginal biome, that healthy lactobacilli, they go away. And so the pH goes up and we have more bacteria here. And then if we are able to have sex, maybe on our birthday or our anniversary, all that friction and back and forth movement can move the bacteria from the vagina up to the urethra and cause those bladder infections. So what goes on in the vagina doesn't always stay in the vagina. It sometimes moves up to the urethra and the urinary tract. So when women come in, and I have patients who are not in a partnered relationship, and they're not interested in sex, but they're having a lot of bad odor, a lot of itching and burning, it's because they have more bacteria in their vaginal space. And that again is because they don't have the healthy lactobacilli. And the reason they don't is because there's no glucose for that bacteria to ingest and metabolize. They don't have the glucose because there's no estrogen in this area. Remember, vaginal estrogen does not increase the risk of breast cancer, and it doesn't travel through your whole body. So it's something to consider if this is something that you're dealing with. And it's by prescription. You have to see a healthcare provider, but vaginal estrogen can help really change your life, especially if you're in a partnered relationship and you want to have sex, because it can make sex much more comfortable. So let's see the next slide. What do we have next? We're almost at the end, so I can take questions. Oh, here we are. We're at the end. So I want to tell you, I just launched a new website called yourmenocoach.com. And if you have your phone, it will work. You can use this QR code. I have a menopause quiz you can take. I have a blog. I also have on-demand webinars that are half-hour each on all aspects of menopause. You can do all 3 webinars or one at a time. It's up to you. Lots of information here. So those are those video courses, and they're also on Teachable. If you can also come and see me as a patient if you prefer. I see patients here at El Camino Hospital. The bad thing or the downside is I'm out of everyone's network, but I can do consults by telehealth if you don't want to be seen as a patient. And a lot of women do that. Then they can take their list of things that they need to their own healthcare provider. I will put this information up in the chat. Can we go back? Can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, and if you want to be my patient, here's my office phone number. You can call to get an appointment if you'd like. And then if you'd like to follow me on social media, it's at Nurse Barb Dean, and I have a lot of videos. In fact, I just did one on it was up today on Instagram on vaginal irritation and odor. So now you guys have been an amazing audience to listen to me go on and on about menopause, and of course I could talk for hours about this. But I'm happy to take questions. So Vicki, if you want to ask me, you can. And if people want to put them in the chat, that's good. But do feel free to contact me through yourmenocoach.com. And Vicki, maybe could you put up the QR codes again, and then we'll toggle back and forth. Thank you so much, Vicki. You're really good at this.
Oh, you are so not telling the truth.
Okay. All right, what do you want to talk about? Okay.
I will, so a lot of the questions that were asked in the Google Doc, I think you've answered, but I'll skip over them if you want to add anything. I'll brush on them if you want to add anything more. And then I'll go to the questions in the chat. So is HRT safe? And separate from that, are bioidenticals generally covered by insurance?
So the first question was, is HRT safe? So hormone replacement therapy, or HRT, it's not for everyone. That's why you want to talk to someone who's a menopause provider. Who cannot take it? There are women who have breast cancer, women who have advanced cardiovascular disease, or women who are more than 10 years from their final period, because by then they've developed a lot of atherosclerotic plaque in their carotid arteries and their coronary arteries. But if you're within the first few years after your final period and you don't have high blood, uncontrolled high blood pressure, because I have patients who have high blood pressure on hormones, or if you're not actively being treated for breast cancer, it's something that you can consider. Bioidenticals covered by insurance? Most are. In fact, a lot of my patients use the patch. So there's an estradiol patch. It's generic. It's very inexpensive. And most insurance companies cover the bioidentical patch or the Prometrium. I want to tell you, you do not have to go to a provider who does hair, saliva, and what's called Dutch testing, the dried urine testing. You don't have to spend $750 for any of these hormone tests and to get compounded non-FDA approved hormones. You can get bioidentical hormones through prescription. You can pick them up at Rite Aid or CVS or Walgreens, and most of the time they're covered by your insurance. So you don't have to go see providers who are telling you to use a pellet and then asking you for $750.
Thank you. I think you've answered this, but I'll just acknowledge it. Can diet mitigate hot flashes and disrupted sleep? What foods to avoid? So I think we've handled that in your presentation. I think you've also handled, is decreased interest in sex common? What are your solutions?
Well, let me say this. Decreased interest in sex is very, very common. What are the solutions? This works, and this is evidence-based. Calendar it. I know, right? Another thing on the to-do list, but it works. So if you decide, you know what, I like my partner, it's been a while, I want to have sex, put it on your calendar and let them know. Okay, Wednesday morning, we're going to have sex, or Saturday afternoon or Friday night or whatever. But when you plan for it as a woman, we have to be aroused first before we can have desire, right? So we don't just automatically have all this desire. We typically have to be aroused. And, for some of us, it's watching Outlander. For some of us, it's Bridgerton. For some of us, it's putting on music, or taking a hot bath, or lighting candles. If you plan for it, you can wear sexy underwear. You can turn off your computer, not check your email. You can sext your partner, and sexting can be the gamut from "I can't wait to nibble on your ear," something sort of really cute and not over the top, or whatever is comfortable between you and your partner. So plan ahead for sex, and it works. And what women have found, and this is research-based, once they start back having more sex, they want to have more sex as they're having more fun. If you're having trouble with orgasms, if it's taking forever, do watch my video on YouTube, because I have best sex toys for women over 50.
I'll check that out.
Yeah, check it out. And I have best lubes for women over 50 too.
So I think you've dealt with this as well. What do I need to do to stop the weight gain? That's not my question, but it could be my question.
Okay, so for the weight gain, remember, it's not your fault. So just let go of the guilt. And what you really want to do is you need to increase your exercise and your resistance training and weight training if you can. So what you want to do is build up your muscle mass a little bit. That also will help your bones. That will help you burn calories a little bit faster. Go to a more plant-based diet and do the intermittent fasting where you're skipping dinner and not eating after 7 p.m. The other thing that works, it's very old school, but keeping a food diary works, because then you're accountable to yourself. Like, I don't want to eat the cookie because then I have to write it down. Noom also works. That's the Noom app where you're increasing awareness. So I just want to put this out there. A lot of times when we eat, we're not hungry. We're thirsty or we're mad. Like when I'm mad, I go to the cupboard and I'm looking for chocolate to make me less mad. Or I want to celebrate. Or I'm just eating out of habit. Or I'm watching TV. Or I'm done with these kids. They've done their homework. They've written their essays. I just want my time, and I'm going to sit in front of the television and I'm going to eat. I see somebody nodding there. I'm going to eat unconsciously. That's a lot of calories. So at night, what I ask my patients to do is make yourself a nice cup of peppermint tea and don't eat if you can. And learn to feel a little bit hungry. There was a question here about heart disease. Can I take it in the chat?
Yep, sure.
In terms of heart disease risk for women who are within the first 5 years of menopause, what I do for my patients is I check their lipid profile to make sure they don't have high cholesterol. I make sure that I do a good history and I look to see if they've had early heart attack in their family. And here in Silicon Valley, we have a lot of women of South Asian descent, and they have an increased risk of insulin resistance and something called Lp(a). So when I see my patients, I want to do a good health history and I want to rule out any risk for using hormone therapy. And then if there's no risk, then we prescribe it. But estrogen helps the blood vessels. It helps them be flexible. So there's less atherosclerosis that gets deposited. I hope that helps.
Yes, thank you. This is a question. I've been using evening primrose oil tablets to manage my bleeding problem for about a year. Is it safe to use it for several years, like 3 or 4 years? Does it have estrogen? If not,
go ahead. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, just if not, how does it help me, or does it help me at all?
A lot of women find that evening primrose oil is very beneficial for bleeding. And there's some studies that show that it has a slight anti-estrogen effect, a little SERM effect. So if it works for you, it's a very safe herb to take. And if it works for you, you can take it. If you're still having a lot of bleeding issues though, if you're in your 40s, if you're bleeding more than 10 days at a time, if you're bleeding more often than every 21 days, you should see a healthcare provider. So if you're trying to manage it and it's not really working, you may want to see a healthcare provider. There's 2 things that happen in perimenopause that can cause bleeding. Well, 3. One is hormonal fluctuation. Another is fibroids. About 30% of women over 50 have fibroids, and if they're impinging on the uterine lining, they'll cause bleeding. But a lot of us have polyps, and polyps can cause a lot of irregular bleeding. So do the best you can, and if you're doing well with the evening primrose oil, that's fine. But if not, or you've been more than 3 or 4 years and you haven't had a period, and then all of a sudden you start bleeding, you do need to see a healthcare provider, because postmenopausal bleeding can be a sign of abnormal cell growth or even uterine cancer.
Another question, 3 months after my vaccine, my period stopped 100% and have not returned. 10 months now. I'm 50. I had regular periods before that. There have been some stories of this being linked to the vaccine. Is there any research and can you discuss? I have also heard that young women have had problems with their periods. Most discussions are cancelled on social media, so we have no way to find out the truth. It would be nice to know if there is research on this topic and will it be made public?
I'm so glad you asked that question. And yes, there is research on this topic and it is public. You can search CDC, the CDC site has some information on irregular periods. And so it is something that we've seen, and we don't know the exact, what we call mechanism of action for it, but we know that our periods are very much related to a lot of factors that are not well understood. In your case, it may have been just a coincidence that at age 50 after your vaccine that put you into menopause. We don't know. Some women will go into an immediate menopause when they're under tremendous stress, like the death of a family member, or moving, or in a war situation. So some women will be sent into menopause because of it. At this point, there is no data, and it's been looked at. So there's no data that shows that the vaccine causes early menopause or causes a difficulty getting pregnant. So there's no issue with that, but it can cause some menstrual irregularity. The other thing that we noticed with the vaccine was in the arm where women got the vaccine, remember under your arm, you have a lot of lymph nodes. A lot of women had a lot of swelling in that arm. And there were also women who noticed mammographic changes within the first 3 months. So if that happens, what we do as providers, we say, you can wait a few months for your mammogram, you can wait, and then we check after. But I haven't seen any women develop breast cancer after their vaccine. And in my office, we had over 500 women who were pregnant get vaccinated, and not one had a baby with any kind of issue. So I hope that's reassuring.
Thank you. How do I know if I've entered menopause? I think you've dealt with this, but if there's anything else you'd like to add.
So how do you know if you've entered menopause? Well, menopause is the one key question. So have you had any bleeding in the last 12 months? If you have not had any bleeding in 12 months, you're in menopause. If you've had irregular bleeding and or some hot flashes, muscle aches, night sweats, shivering, you're probably in perimenopause. So if your periods are irregular, you're probably perimenopausal. But menopause is that one magic day, no periods for 12 months. The next day you're postmenopausal.
Are there any statistics around pregnancy once your period becomes irregular due to menopause? And separate question, but same asker, what is the impact on my emotional health?
The impact on your emotional health from declining fertility, or the impact on your emotional health from irregular periods?
I think it's from being perimenopausal or menopausal.
Okay. Well, let's talk about the declining fertility. So when your periods are nice and regular and they come when you expect them, even if it's not every 28 days on the dot, you have good fertility. But at age 35 in general, fertility rates start to decline. And by age 40, the likelihood of a spontaneous pregnancy for all women is between 5 and 10% of women at age 40. At age 41, it goes down to 2 to 5%. And at that point, there's also an increased risk of miscarriage. About 50% of women over 40 will have a miscarriage. And that's because our eggs and our ovaries are old. It's not, we look great. Like we look in the mirror, we don't look 40, but our ovaries didn't get the memo. And so they're older and our eggs are older. So fertility rates start to decline at 35. That doesn't mean you can't get pregnant. It just means it's harder. But by 40, it's much, much harder. So here's what I say to my patients. If you are 40 and you want to get pregnant and you haven't gotten pregnant in 3 months, go see a specialist. Do not wait. Do not pass go. Do not collect $200. Go see a specialist if you want to be pregnant. Now, in terms of emotions, absolutely. Perimenopause wrecks our emotions because you have wide swings in hormones, right? And so you can have a lot of estrogen for a while and then none. And remember, as estrogen levels decline, you have less serotonin. Serotonin is the feel-good hormone. Less estrogen, less serotonin. More women are depressed at menopause around the world, regardless of their circumstances. More women have anxiety. More women are prone to panic attacks. So absolutely, and I say this, never doubt the power of hormones. They really do impact your emotions. And if you have teenage daughters at home, you've probably noticed this also.
How long does it take to go through menopause?
Everyone's different, right? We all get a different ticket on the hormonal roller coaster ride. And so perimenopause can be 3 years, 7, 10 or more years. Postmenopause, there are about 10% of women who are what we call super flashers. These are women who are in their 70s and 80s and still having debilitating regular hot flashes and night sweats. So everyone's different, but if you want a prediction, talk to your mom or an older sister about what their experience was, because there are genetic factors.
How do you know that you've gone through menopause completely? I think you've answered that. It's actually one day, you like before or after. Can menopause cause weight gain? Yes.
Oh, I like this question. Can I ask this one about FSH in the chat box?
Yep, for sure.
So this is a question about FSH, so follicle stimulating hormone, right? So a lot of, if you're doing any online research or you see certain providers, they'll say, well, let's check your FSH level to see if you're in menopause. Don't waste your money, because your FSH level is a snapshot of that day. So follicle stimulating hormone really is an indicator of ovarian reserve, how many eggs are left in the ovary, but it changes every day. So yes, the FSH level goes up over time. It'll get up to 40 or 100, over time, but it's jagged. So today it might be 12, and next month it might be 6, and then the month after it might be 40, and then it might drop down again to 12. So FSH is not a great way to predict if you're in menopause. Now, of course, I do see some patients who are, 53, and they're like, I need to know whether or not I can get pregnant, and we'll do their FSH level. And I've found that it varies. I had a patient who had a FSH of 9. She's 56. She had an FSH of 9, and then 3 months later, it was 30. And then 3 months after that, it was 7. So FSH is not a good predictor.
So we can move to the chat, and if you just like to, you can either read them yourself or I can read them, but I would like to stop sharing my screen because I'm concerned that any names might be attention. Can you see the chat when I pop it up on my screen? So I'm trying to maintain people's privacy.
Okay.
So can you see the chat now when I put that up?
I can see it, and I can zoom my own chat.
So I think if I stop sharing my screen, then you can either have me read the questions or you can read the questions, but I don't want to share it with them.
Okay, Vicki, you can read them. Okay.
Okay, I'm going to stop sharing the screen if that's okay.
No, I am sorry. I'm looking. My arms are. I'm older, so I need my. Okay, go ahead, Vicki.
Okay.
We cannot see the chat. Don't worry.
Pardon?
We don't see the chat. When you open your chat, we won't see it. We don't see it.
Okay, thank you. So let me just scroll down. I've been postmenopausal for about 5 years and still suffer from sleep and memory issues. Might it make sense to start bioidentical hormones at this point? Any other suggestions?
Absolutely. I think that if you're only 5 years from the last menstrual period, and NAMS, North American Menopause Society, says within 10. So if that's something you want to do see someone who knows how to prescribe them for you. But yes, it's a very, very good idea to think about that, because you're going to spend another 30 to 50 years of your life postmenopausal. And there's a lot of benefits besides helping with the hot flashes and night sweats. There's recent data that shows that women on estrogen have a reduced risk of dementia, and women on estrogen have less beta amyloid. These are the protein fragments that are associated with Alzheimer's. So in the long term, we're recommending that women consider estrogen because of the many, many benefits.
There's a few comments here, so I don't know if you want to make comment on them. There's one here that says the UK has a much clearer protocols around menopause. There's a web link. Why is this not made available here?
You're so right. The National Health Service in the UK has a phenomenal way of working with women in menopause. And the cost of their medications is only £9 per month, no matter what they're getting. So the best way for you here in the States to educate yourself is to go to menopause.org. And I just want to say this, here we have a lot of competition. We live in a society where there's a lot of competition and there's a lot of information you have to sift through. Please use trusted sources when you are looking for information about your body, your health, and your future. And my assistants, they're like, oh, did you see this? Women are using jade eggs. They're using these eggs to put in there. It's on an egg. It's like it's a polished crystal to put in their vagina for vaginal dryness or vaginal steaming. I mean, celebrities are trying to be influencers and tell women what to do based on no data at all. But usually they're trying to sell you something. So be really, really careful.
Yikes. Just someone's trying to get in. Along that same vein, there is a very large German study showing a combination of St. John's wort and black cohosh is very effective. Most do not promote the use of antidepressants unless already experiencing depression or anxiety previously.
Yeah, black cohosh has been, it's been one of those things that has a lot of mixed results. And so in any study on anything in menopause, we do have about a 50% placebo rate. And black cohosh has mixed results. So there's a lot of studies that show it's really good and a lot of studies that show it's not so good. And St. John's wort, the way it works is it increases serotonin levels. So what I would say is if you're going to use black cohosh, there's only one I recommend. It's called remedies, because it's pharmaceutical grade, meaning you're getting the exact amount of black cohosh every single day. And if you're going to use St. John's wort, again, get it from a reputable source. There's another herb that's available. It's called serenol. It's SERENOL. Again, it's got mixed results. It's a Swedish flower pollen extract, but it also increases serotonin levels. It takes 3 months to work and it reduces hot flashes by about 40%. I saw in the chat equel.com. I don't receive anything if you use Equel, but because I've been recommending it for a long time, if you use the code NurseBarb, it's either NurseBarb or NurseBarb25, you can get a discount. But you can go to equel.com. That's the soy metabolite that has consistent data, not mixed data, reduction in hot flashes and night sweats. The other thing I want to say is if you're seeing someone who's telling you to use progesterone cream on your arm, don't use it. Your body cannot absorb progesterone through your skin. And so we're seeing a lot of women with abnormal bleeding. they're saying, well, I'm using something natural. It's made from yams, but it doesn't get absorbed in your skin. We've seen a lot of issues with that.
You mentioned low risk of taking hormones in terms of breast cancer. Is there any increased risk with heart disease?
So with with hormones and heart disease, it's only an increased risk if someone has uncontrolled hypertension, if they have migraines with aura that get worse, they have them more frequently after they start hormones, or if they already know they have heart disease, if they have coronary artery calcifications. And that's why it's super important to talk to a healthcare provider who's going to do a lipid profile, ask you about your family history, see if you're at higher risk before they prescribe hormones. But most women can take hormones and they can take them safely.
Is the vaginal ring considered a vaginal hormone that prevents dryness?
Can you say that again? Oh, the vaginal ring.
Yeah, sorry, it's my Australian accent.
Oh, sorry. There is a vaginal ring called E-string for estrogen ring, not the NuvaRing, not the NuvaRing for contraception, but there is an E-string that's an estrogen ring that goes in the vagina. Here's the puppet again. But there's also VagiFem, that's a little vaginal estrogen. And I often prescribe a little Estrace vaginal cream. These are all bioidentical, right? They're the same as what your body makes. And a lot of times women need a little bit of cream on the labia so that they get that elasticity that they need. So Estrace cream is pretty inexpensive. Some women also use Premarin vaginal cream or VagiFem. And again, remember, it doesn't go through your whole body, so it doesn't help with hot flashes or night sweats.
So a more general question, what age does menopause start? Is that going to be around the time my mum would have started?
Yeah, you know what? You're probably going to go through menopause at about the same time as your mother. But the average age of menopause is 51. That means half of women will have menopause before 51 and half after. For me, it was 48 when I stopped having periods. And I have patients who are, I have that patient who's 56. She has periods on the dot every month. So again, half before 51, half after, and your mom's the best predictor.
Can irregular periods in 20s and 30s, then regular periods in 40s be attributed to menopause?
No, irregular periods can happen for many, many reasons. And of course, probably some of the women in this audience have polycystic ovarian syndrome, and that causes irregular periods. That's an endocrine disorder where women have more hair growth, more acne, and it's much harder to lose weight. But many women have irregular periods in their 20s, level out in their 30s, but it's not a predictor of early menopause.
Thank you. You mentioned joint pain during menopause in some women. Where is this pain typically located? So
with joint pain, we see there's some ethnic differences. So women who are from Asia typically have more shoulder pain and hip pain. It's not typically in your fingers like arthritis, but also the knees. So knee, hip, and shoulder pain are associated with reduction in collagen levels, and no amount of bone broth is going to help. And this is what I tell my patients. If they're having a lot of joint pain, I say, why don't we consider estrogen for 3 months and see how you feel? And a lot are like, oh, it's gone. Now I can exercise again. But I see women who've been to multiple orthopedic surgeons, have gone to physical therapy, they're not getting any better. And then when they go on estrogen, things get a lot better. I'm not saying that estrogen cures everything, but it's associated with every single system in your body.
On that point, what about supplements like collagen peptides? Do things like that help if you have declining collagen?
Well, they can help a little bit, but it's really hard for the collagen that you drink in bone broth to get from your stomach to your joints. It doesn't hurt. But also drinking bone broth doesn't really help the collagen in your skin either. So, we do the best we can. The best things to do are to have a healthy diet with 5 to 7 servings of fruits and vegetables every day, mostly vegetables, and reducing, again, the land-based protein. You can do the very best you can, but a lot of supplements are really not worth the money. There are 2 that are. If you're not getting enough dairy, if you're not getting enough calcium-rich food, either through almond milk, soy milk, or regular cow's milk, or cheese or yogurt, many women are not getting enough calcium in their diet, but you don't want to take too much. If you take too many supplements, it can lead to kidney stones and more coronary artery calcification. So it's got to be just right. It's better to have the whole food, have the food matrix, have the protein so you can absorb the calcium better. And also vitamin D. Most women are deficient in vitamin D because we use sunscreen. We don't want to get dark spots, but our vitamin D levels are pretty low. So the next time you go in for your annual physical or you go see your healthcare provider, ask for a vitamin D level so you can see if you're deficient. And vitamin D also helps with mood.
Thank you. I went through menopause. Well, first of all, let me do a check-in. We're at 8:32. You've been going for an hour and a half. Are you still up for answering any more questions?
I'm up for it. If you guys are here, I'm here. I love this. So if you want to leave, it's okay. And I'm sorry, I keep moving in and out
because we still have more questions. This has happened every time I've been on a presentation with you.
Thank you, Vicki.
Which is a good indication. I went through menopause 7 years ago. Is it too late to go on bioidentical hormones? I am 52.
7 years ago and you're 52, my goodness, you probably would benefit from hormone treatment. So it's not too late. Remember, North American Menopause Society says within 10 years of final menstrual period, and I would say you had an early menopause, and there's a lot of benefits of estrogen you haven't had. So it is something to think about and talk about with a menopause practitioner. And do see someone who is certified by the North American Menopause Society, because at 52, you might benefit from a little bit higher levels of estrogen or bioidentical hormones.
There is a second a follow-up message to that. I do have high cholesterol. So does that change anything to your answer?
If your cholesterol is managed, so if you're high cholesterol, if you're taking a statin, you can take hormones. If you are one of those folks who says, I don't want to take a statin, if you were my patient, I would say get a coronary artery calcium score. Let's see what that is. If it's low, you could go on hormones.
So I think we've covered this, but is there any herb to help with increasing your estrogen levels?
Well, you can use phytoestrogens or plant-based estrogens. Flaxseed is a plant-based estrogen, but it'll make you poop. So a little bit goes a long way. A lot of women use flaxseed oil in their salad dressing. It is a phytoestrogen. You can also have more soy in your diet. You can use tofu, soy milk, soy cheese, roasted soy nuts. These are phytoestrogens, and they will naturally increase your estrogen levels. And you can also consider Equel, which is the soy metabolite.
Post-hysterectomy, how will I know that my perimenopause is coming closer to an end?
So this is a great question. And we talked about FSH levels for most women, but for women who've had a hysterectomy and they're not bleeding anymore, that's a woman where I would ask her to have some hormone testing. I would check her estradiol level and her FSH level to see where she's at. The thing about women with a hysterectomy is that they only need estrogen. They don't need progesterone. And the study, that terrible study from 20 years ago showed that women who only took estrogen had a reduced risk of breast cancer. Isn't that funny how they say in that black box warning, you shouldn't take estrogen because it increases the risk of breast cancer? It wasn't the estrogen, it was the progesterone that they were using. And in that study, the Women's Health Initiative women who only took estrogen had a reduced risk of breast cancer. I hope that helps.
So I have a friend that had a hysterectomy, and she suffered from declining interest in sex, and she was prescribed testosterone, and she said it was exceptional. Does that work for women that have not had a hysterectomy, and why aren't menopausal women prescribed testosterone?
It's a good question, because in Europe, women are prescribed testosterone, and in Australia, women are prescribed testosterone. But in the United States, right now, there's no testosterone that is approved by the FDA. However, there are many providers, myself included, who prescribe testosterone, what we call off-label, so it's not indicated. And we prescribe the male type of testosterone at 1/10 or 10% of the dose after we do labs to make sure the woman's body doesn't already have too much and that she'll tolerate it. And we also check the lipid profile or the cholesterol. So yes, testosterone works very, very well for sex drive. And some women benefit hugely from doing that. There's also a new medication out called Vyleesi. That's an injectable medication that it's like an EpiPen. You use it, and within 45 minutes, you will be in the mood. So Vyleesi has been a game changer for many of my patients who like their partner, want to have sex, just have no desire.
So why don't we see ads on TV for that?
I don't know if you have Vyleesi, you might have. Yeah.
Will the memory loss, etc., revert to how it used to be before, or continue from where it is at menopause?
It's a good question. What I find, and I'm going to tell you a quick story. I have a patient who's a surgeon. She spent her whole life in med school, in residency and surgical residency, and she came to see me. She's a doctor. She came to see me after seeing 3 of her doctor friends, and she had such bad brain fog, she was going to retire. And I asked her the key question, are you having periods? She said, yeah, I'm still having periods, but they're once every 2 to 3 months. I'm like, let's talk about your sleep. Turns out she was perimenopausal. I started her on estrogen. Now, it took 6 weeks, but she said, I'm back to my old self. At 3 weeks, she felt better, but the memory and the brain fog disappears if you get better sleep. Estrogen is one way to do it. There's other ways to help women with sleep, and there's other medications that are coming down the line that work on the hypothalamus and improving sleep. If we can help women improve sleep, they have more vitality, they have more joy, they have more energy, and the brain fog goes away. So it will go back to what you were pre-menopause. If you don't use something and you don't improve your sleep somehow, the memory fog, the brain fog gets worse and worse.
When would you start HRT to help lower your chances of developing dementia later in life?
I would start HRT. I have patients who start hormone treatment in perimenopause while they're still having irregular periods. And of course, I have patients who start after menopause. I have patients who don't really become symptomatic, don't have hot flashes or night sweats or vaginal dryness for a couple of years after their periods stop. Whenever they start, it helps reduce the risk of Alzheimer's and dementia.
I found hydrating almost double helps the body stay cooler. Is it true that the heat dries up the cells, causing degeneration of memory, declining eyesight, etc.?
Well, it's not the dehydration, it's the lack of estrogen. And so you're right to hydrate. You're right to stay hydrated. What we know from research is that it's the omega-3 fatty acids from fish. Some fatty fish will help your stop the eye dryness, help reduce the dryness around your vulva and your vagina. But it doesn't affect memory. The omega-3s help improve memory, and this is recent research, but it's not the lack of water.
You recommend Equel. How about other similar supplements, or Equel is the best? I think you've already answered that.
Yeah,
Usually-
Equal is the only one endorsed by the North American Menopause Society, and it's the only one with enough clinical data for them to recommend it.
And how long after taking it is to judge whether it's having effect or not?
I see patients who see a little bit of improvement at 3 weeks, but maximal improvement, it takes about 2 months.
Any comments regarding new acne in perimenopause?
Oh my God, don't you hate that? What's happening is that as estrogen levels come down, your androgenic or male type hormones, the balance is shifted. So you have more, I'm Italian, so I had like a beard and acne. Women get acne on their back. It happens because your hormone levels are shifting, and you have more oil producing hormones in your body. If that's happening, there are ways that we can make that better. So do talk to your healthcare provider or see the dermatologist. If you have a lot of hair and it's still dark and you can afford it, get the laser treatment, because once it becomes white, the laser doesn't work as well. And then it's really painful to get the electrolysis or the, all the other things I have to do as an Italian.
Do you recommend any vitamins that can help with the foggy brain and the feeling of tiredness?
So the only vitamins that have been shown in research to help with the foggy brain, again, are the omega-3 fatty acids. So it's the DHA, it's the fish oil supplements that can help with the foggy brain. The other thing that helps is if you need to get a good night's sleep. And I tell a lot of patients, please don't take the prescription sleep aids. They're addictive. So think about doing good sleep hygiene, think about starting some meditation, some melatonin, and then a lot of women use Tylenol PM because it's just Benadryl, which is just an antihistamine. Some use Z-Quil. And then I think you can buy some other over-the-counters that have a little GABA, GABA, and that works on the GABA receptors in the brain, and that can help women relax so they get a good night's sleep.
What about something like trazodone? I know that doctors like to hand that out, and that is an antidepressant that was found to help more with sleep, assist people with sleep problems than antidepressant. But is that killing two birds with one stone?
Yeah, so trazodone is one of those ones that I prescribe to some patients who don't do well on the natural remedies because it's not addictive, but everyone is different. And so some women find that even, some women do really well on it. And I start at a very low dose of 50 milligrams. Some women need 100, but it really can help them sleep better at night. And again, it's not addictive. So, and it's not a controlled substance. So it's much easier to prescribe. There's a lot of good sleep researchers in this area. Stanford has a good sleep research center. El Camino does as well. There's a lot of people that can help you get to sleep without relying on medication. So, you can avail yourself of that or reach out to me and I'll send you their names.
Does estrogen react differently in women from different parts of the world?
No, that's a great question. So, remember, when we use bioidentical hormones, they are the exact same molecule that your body has been making since puberty. So there are ethnic differences in how we experience menopause, but to date, and this is over 20 years of research, women from other parts of the world do not react differently to bioidentical hormones. And that's the key, is that the bioidenticals. Now, we use bioidenticals as a transdermal, as a patch, or as a gel. There's 1 or 2 bioidentical oral tablets. Women react differently to different formulations or how they're used. So I have some patients who do better on the gel, some who do better on the patch, some who do better on an oral tablet.
So just on that point, I have friends that go back to Europe to visit family, and I think they get patches for HRT, but they say they're not available here. Is that correct? And they say that they're much better. Whatever they're getting and they get prescribed in Europe, they feel is not available here. I've not really explored it, but.
Oh no, you can get estrogen patches here that are pretty similar to what they may have a different name, but you can get 17 beta estradiol, which is the bioidentical estrogen that your body makes as a patch, and it's generic, so it's inexpensive. The trade name is Vivel or Vivel Dot, and so you can get pretty much the same thing you get in Europe. There's one patch that's got estrogen and progesterone. I don't typically prescribe that because patients do much better taking the oral prometrium or progesterone.
Is hair loss a symptom of menopause?
You know, that's a good question. Hair loss and menopause, it can be. It can be if your androgens, if your estrogen's declining and you're noticing more hair on your chin and you're losing hair on your head where you don't want to lose it. But a lot of women notice they lose their underarm hair, they lose their pubic hair. Some of that is aging and some of that is hormonal changes. For my patients, when they come in and they are worried about hair loss, we check a vitamin D and a vitamin B12. And if you're a vegan and you're not taking B12, you're probably losing some hair. So make sure you're getting those vitamin levels drawn. But hair loss is mostly related to genetics and family. So if you have a lot of family members who are losing their hair, that's probably the issue. What do we do for it? I'll tell you what we find. We can do every lab test in the world. And you know what we find? Use the Rogaine. Get Rogaine, get the men's dose because it's more concentrated and it's less expensive. So use Rogaine. Rogaine works to stimulate hair growth as you're losing it, and do it as quickly as you can. Don't wait till there's bald spots, but Rogaine works. You know, first get it checked out, see a dermatologist, get the vitamin levels checked.
Okay, I have got to the end of the chat. So if anyone would like to unmute themselves and talk to Barb directly, there are some shout outs here for you, Barb. Finally, an expert on menopause. Oh, there's lots of shout outs now. I can't keep up. Super great presentation. This is an excellent discussion. Thank you, Barb. This talk has been so very helpful, informative, and timely for me. Thank you so much, Nurse Barb. So lots of thank yous. I don't know if you can see all of these. They're coming thick and fast. So I am so happy that you came to our community. I know how I felt after I first heard you speak, and I hope this has helped everybody that has attended tonight. It's your last chance to ask a question. Yes, it is being recorded, I believe. Someone just asked that. So yes, it will be shared. It'll be shared with everybody that registered. It will be shared on our Homestead PTSA website. And if any of the other PTSAs want it that have joined tonight, I will share it with them.
Awesome. And I want to just say thank you for being so attentive and making this really fun for me. I appreciate it. You can follow me on social media. You can get in touch with me at yourmenocoach.com. And you know, I really love what I do. I really love helping women. And so I hope you all don't feel overwhelmed. I hope you feel like there's ways to feel better. You can feel better. And I didn't even get to talk about sex, right? So there's a lot of good information about sex and having really great, fantastic sex if you want to, right? If you want to. Not everybody wants to, and that's okay too, but we didn't, maybe that's another talk for another time.
Could you put, so I'm trust me, I'm not getting any kickbacks from Barb, but I did buy her book the first time I listened to her speak, and I found it very useful because it goes through lots of things in a very relatable layperson's way to understand. So I can't, is it at the Hot Guide to a Cool and Sexy Menopause?
I'll put it in the chat. It's called The Hot Guide to a Cool, Sexy Menopause. And remember, all of the proceeds go to Fame Hospital in Tanzania, the hot guide to a cool, sexy menopause. I don't receive a dime from that book because, look, I volunteer there. I'm on the board. It's a sustainable hospital. It's all Tanzanian docs, all Tanzanian nurses, no religion. I've been there for 6 years and I'm learning Swahili. I go back as often as I can, but I donate all the proceeds from the book to Fame Hospital.
Thank you so much.
It was awesome.
Wow, thank
Thank
you.
you.
This is great. All right, I hope to see you guys sometime soon. Take care.
Thank you.
Vicki, this is awesome. What a great group.
Thank you so much, Bob.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
Bye, everybody.